We're here for a certain reason. I forget the name. What is the reason we're here? What is the topic this week?
What employers are looking for in an MS graduate.
What employers are looking for in MS graduates. So wanted in MS graduates. So the game we're going to play is I'm going to ask you what you think employers want. Yeah, I mean this is 0 credits, but I still expect a little bit of work out of you. So I'm going to ask you what do you think employers want, and then after we're done I'm going to give you the answers. Well, I'm not going to give you the answers. I'm going to give you the result of a survey that was done a few years ago to see what employers want. So, what do employers want? Any ideas?
Not necessarily formula memorization, but understanding the approach, the underlying statistical thinking, which is sort of what we got in statistical software when we were playing around with, well, what graph actually captures the image.
All right, I'm going to write down the key thing you said, even though it may not be exactly what you said. Statistical thinking.
I hope it isn't formula memorization.
Programming. Statistical programming, all right, programming.
Communication.
Experience in analyzing like projects, designing and analyzing projects.
All right. Let's say project experience. I'll just call that analyzing data. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Communication.
Communication. Okay.
Related to that one, people who are good at interviews.
People who are good at interviews, all right? They want to hire people who are good at interviews. Good at,
Although they might not be conscious of putting it that way.
but you are. Okay. Anything else that employers might want?
Being able to collaborate with others and work with others.
Collaboration. Anything else?
Good at multitasking, prioritizing, and meeting deadlines.
All right. Speaking of which, excuse me for a second, I need to plug my outlet back in here. All right, I'll capture that as multitasking, meeting deadlines.
I guess this follows under experience or meeting deadlines, but maybe good estimation skills.
Your
Estimation skills?
estimation?
Yeah, like how long will this project, how much time will it to complete something or?
Aha. Okay. Multitasking, meeting deadlines. I'll put that here. Estimating. Time frame. So getting an idea, being able to figure out up front how long you think a project will take to be completed. Okay. Anything else? All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. I did that on purpose. Yes, I definitely did that on purpose. All right. So, this looks like a reasonable list. While I'm asking you questions, which do you think are the top 2 I don't know if that's what's in here or something. I think, you know, they list them, I think they prioritize them somewhat. What do you think the top 2 skills are? Communication and communication and programming. All right. So we have a couple of votes here for communication and programming. Any other?
Experience as well.
Experience, maybe? Yeah.
A lot of experience.
Experience. All right.
I would hope statistical thinking is.
Yeah, right. All right, let's.
Otherwise, why are we getting?
Right.
Why are we being hired?
I already have 4 top 2 items. All right. Yeah, it'd be maybe hard to pick a few, but let me ask it. Let me ask it a different way. Which of these are the top 2 things that employers find that are most lacking in students?
Programming ability.
We have a vote for programming, communication.
Statistical thinking.
All right.
And experience.
There are a few for programming, communication, statistical thinking. So what do you think is, remember what they're missing? You think they're, of these 3, which one would you throw out? Remember, it's not what's important, it's what employers tend to say are missing in their MS graduates. Which one of these?
Which one would I
Which-
give up on?
No, which one? You among the employers who were interviewed, right? Among the employers who were interviewed, they listed, I think it was the top 2. If not, I'll apologize, but only half-heartedly. But what do you think employers found was most lacking in students? Not what's most important, but what's most lacking when students came in. They communication with. So among these 3, which one would you throw out as being not among the most 2 important?
Statistical technique. You have to have some degree of statistical technique. After,
Yeah, you think after a master's degree you might have some idea of how to think statistically?
or so I said.
All right. So we have 7 items, and we have top 2 things. So let's see. Let's see what the answers are.
Is it too late to add one to the list? Working without supervision?
It's too late. It's too late. You had your chance. You missed the deadline.
Do that a lot.
So let's see if I can get this back on. So I'm not giving you a handout here because I didn't want you to look up the answers. But this handout will be available. It's just online. If you're a local student, and not all of you who, if you're watching the video, maybe you're not a local student, but if you're a local student, here we go. I think if you're a local student, it's on LabShare. And it's on where, it wouldn't take you too long to find it on LabShare, but let me see if I can find it here. So under LabShare, if you click on Faculty, and then what will you click on next, do you think? After Faculty, probably me. What's the course? $795, right? All right, $795. And there it is, Master Working Group. Okay. And I even highlighted it for you. So Master Working Group. And let's see. So this is the result of a report. It was completed, you can see, in 2012 from the ASA. Anybody remember what ASA stands for? Right. American Statistical Association, right? American Statistical Association. And these are the people who were in the group. Roger Hurl I know pretty well. I knew him because I worked with him on the statistics division of ASQ a long time ago, American Society of Equality a long time ago. And he had worked at GE for a while, and I knew him while he was at GE, and now he's working at Union College, which is a college near Albany. It's in Schenectady. So he's working there now. These other people, like John Baylor, I've heard of, and he was the chair. These other people I don't know, but that means absolutely nothing. So they were asked to develop guidelines, basically to make recommendations to master's programs to help make sure people could get jobs and that students were that they were learning things that were important to their employers. That's basically what they're trying to do. Okay. Now, if you take a look at this, I think they contacted, maybe like 100-something students, and of the 100 students, 29 replied. So the difference between what they're telling you and what you get when you look at a survey is that a typical survey says, well, we contacted 1,000, we got this information from 1,000 adults, but they didn't say if it took 50,000 if they tried to reach 50,000 people and only 1,000 responded, right? The response rate is usually really critical, but that's hardly ever mentioned in surveys. In a survey, if they get 1,000 people, they can get the answer to within plus or minus 3% of something, right? So this is probably some bias sample. Somebody who's doing really well probably doesn't have enough time to be bothered with them, but whatever. So 29 programs, and then they contacted a number of employers, and 19 employers responded. So this is what we have to work with. So I'll reveal these answers. I know this is going to really thrill you, right? I can hardly handle the tension myself. Even less so if I can't get it to work. It appears that my computer just kind of froze. Is it back? All right, we're back. We're back in business. All right. I have a new computer. This is really unsettling. I have a new computer that is in my office, but I haven't. This is my old one. I'll see how well this works. Here we go. All right. So these are the recommendations. This is not what employers. This is what the working group recommends. Right? Is that statistical thinking? There's a difference. You can be really good at statistical methods if someone says, I want you to perform a nonlinear or random forest using the most sophisticated data mining techniques you can. If someone tells you what to do and you can do it, then you can do the statistical method, right? Or if somebody asks you a question on theory, that's a statistical method. But if you walk into a company and they say, well, we have this problem and we don't know quite how to solve it, and you're able to look at their problem in terms of variability and how you might reduce variability and whether you should run a designed experiment or study the measurement process or not even use statistics, that's statistical thinking. That's the way statistical thinking is used. Now here they may have included that. Programming skills. What else is in here? Communication. Did you get the top 3? Is that the top 3? That's good. Now all you have to do is achieve these, right? Excellent. You're on. This is great. We'll be done in another 20 minutes. So, in case that you can't read this because you're watching this on a video, recommendation 1, graduates should have a solid foundation in statistical theory and methods. That's what this group came up with, and statistical thinking. Recommendation 2, programming skills are critical and should be infused throughout the graduate student experience. I'm going to ask you at some point how well you think we're doing at helping you achieve these goals. Number 3, communication skills are critical and should be developed and practiced throughout graduate programs. Recommendation 4, collaboration, teamwork, and leadership development should be part of graduate education. Students should encounter non-routine, real problems throughout their graduate education. What else is here? That was there, right? Projects, I think that was experience. Yeah. You wouldn't have much experience if you kept working on simple projects, right? I think that was kind of a given. Internships, co-ops, or other significant immersive work experiences should be integrated into graduate education. Right? So 5 and 6 are different, right? 5 and 6 are non-routine real problems, but that's maybe in a classroom is a challenging project to work on. But recommendations, internships, co-ops, that put you out more in the real world, right? Not a classroom setting. That's number 6. And number 7. Yeah. You could not have possibly answered this question because it was not what an employer wanted from the graduate student, right? These are recommendations made to graduate programs. Okay. So the first 5 objectives might be translated into learning objectives into graduate programs. 6th, experiential requirement. 7th, a little bit different. So good, you're right on the money. I'm impressed. I'm going to skip through some of this stuff quickly. This is what they did and how they did it. So the email was sent to 68 employers. They received a reply from 19 of them. So 28%. They contacted over 115 students and interviews are completed for 29 of them. So what's that? That's less 25% about. Okay. So I thought you might find this interesting. We'll just go through 2 more things here. One is what students said that helped them get their first job. Right? This is what the students are thinking. And then we'll go through what the employers thought. So the surveys, knowledge skills learned in graduate school that help get the first job. And you can see programming. See, we're here to teach statistics, but if you don't know how to write code and do programming, you're pretty much out of luck. General stat math background and specific tools and methods. Specific tools and methods. Okay, knowledge that helps you get your first job. So majority specifically mentioned SAS. 5 mentioned R, 2 mentioned SQL, 5 mentioned programming skills in general. Okay. Now, just like everything else, this really doesn't. You should translate this all in a very general setting. Okay, but SAS is definitely, at least a few years ago, SAS was definitely an important thing. R, SQL. Okay, what they wish they had more of in school. Donuts. Additional program skills. Statistical method experience with real data, big data. So one of the things I think about is, this is as good a time as any to mention, if programming is that important, how well is programming stressed? And you can see that the recommendation was to stress it throughout the degree. So I know I stressed it a lot in 611, because that's what the course was on programming, right? So it was stressed a lot there. But you need to ask yourself, how much is it being stressed in your other courses? Okay. And you need to think about that. And I would say, not that you have much free time, but try to do more than what's being asked of you in those courses. So if you take a course in regression, it'd be pretty cool to really learn about as many regression techniques as you can in programming. And if you're using SAS and R, and I encourage you to use both of those because, as you know, they operate very differently from each other, right? The kind of thinking you need to do is very different. And the people who wrote the coding for each and who wrote how you use them, they have very different mindsets. It's almost like you're in two different worlds. If you're in the R world or the SAS world, they're really two different worlds. So it's useful to try to see if you can do things in both worlds. That's very valuable. Real data, big data. Did you get any real data or big data in any of your classes so far?
Real data, yes.
What's that?
Real data, yes. Not
Yeah.
big data.
The real data, yes. Big data, no. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know that we ever really talk about how to compute with large data sets or what, how valid all of our smaller sample theory is.
How valid is small sample theory? So the question is, how valid is small sample theory? Well, if you take the data mining course, you'll get a reasonable sense of what to do. Because there are different things you do. Like in the experimental design course, we'll find out we'll use standard techniques. We'll look for small p-values, things like that. But if you have 1 million observations and you're looking for something that's significant, you'll find a lot of them. Because it doesn't take much for something to be reasonably sure that it's doing nothing. You can be reasonably sure that almost everything is doing something. And so you wind up using different techniques. Okay. So one of the techniques you use is how much is it doing? Okay. And I don't know if we probably wouldn't see much of that in experimental design, maybe a little bit. But yeah, you definitely have a different mindset when you work with large data sets. But that should be, that kind of stuff is covered in the data mining course. Yeah, but it's something to think about. And I know, when I teach a course, I feel like I hardly have enough time to teach the material. Never mind to give you all this extra stuff that you want to look at or to spend 2 weeks out of the 15 on a special project. Right. But we'll see. I'm hoping in the 701 class some of you come up with some pretty cool experiments. But even there, when you come up with cool experiments, they're probably not going to be thousands of observations, right? Probably not. Okay. Swapping courses out and in for graduate studies, there wasn't much that they said there. Experience out of formal coursework that helped prepare them for the first job. So work experience. So some of them had good work experience after they were in their bachelor's and before they went back to school for their master's. Another said internship experience. So do we give people a good opportunity to do co-ops or internships in this program?
I don't know that there's any real support for it.
Right. Yeah, there's no requirement for it, and there's no support. There's nothing that encourages you to do it or not encourages you to do it. And I'd say we're remarkably neutral on that. If you want to do it, there's a co-op office, and there are times. There's a couple of times during the year. Cindy, you might know about that more than I do. For when you were doing co-ops in industrial engineering.
Yeah, what about it?
Are there a few times during the year where you can interview for co-ops?
We have different blocks where you're supposed to go on co-op.
Okay, different blocks when you go on co-ops. But how do you find the co-ops? Do you?
Usually you have to find it on your own.
You find them on your
You
own.
can go to the office and they'll give you some advice, but they don't really help that much.
Okay, so there's a co-op office that's there. That they do something, they get paid to do something. So there's a co-op office, and they may be able to provide some support.
And they run the 2 career fairs, but they're generally engineering oriented. I don't think
And
I've
IT.
ever seen more than a handful of stats positions.
So the career fairs tend to be engineering oriented. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay, all right.
I mean, like, do we have good working relationships with companies in the area that might be looking for people from our program?
Yeah.
Or-
The thing about the question is that they're working relationships with companies in the area. I would say if you were here 15 years ago, we had lots of companies that we had relationships with because there were lots of big companies in the area. There was Kodak and Xerox and Johnson & Johnson and General Motors and Bausch & Lomb. And a lot of those companies have either shrunk down or are fighting to survive, or they're about where they were before, but they're doing different kind of things. Xerox, for example, used to be more of an engineering company. Now it's more of a service provider company. So I'd say the opportunities are reduced from what they were a number of years ago. Yeah. On the other hand, there's a lot more stuff you can look up on Google and whatever. So there are opportunities, and I'm always amazed. People find positions one way or the other. Yeah. But yeah, we provide no active support for it. Okay, let's see what the employer said. Look at this. So communication, remember 19 employees. Communication was mentioned by 14 of them. Programming and stat background by 10 and 11. So this is the candidates when they're interviewing. And this is what they thought was impressive on an interview.
Does that mean communication with during the interview, or their communication background, or they have experience or good communication skills that they're talking about?
That's a good. Does communication refer to what their background was, or does it refer to what happened on the interview? Right. You'll have to look that up. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, from my experience, your quality of communication at the interview is usually what people pick up on when they think about, oh, that person could communicate well. Or they may have asked the student, well, we'd like you to give a presentation. And in their presentation, some people ask some questions, and they see how well, not just whether you can answer or not, which is statistical background, but how smoothly you answer it, and and if they ask you a follow-up, how well you can get into it and understand what kind of, what their knowledge base is.
You say employers, are they talking about like statistical bosses, like a person who works with statistics, or human resources?
These employers, these are not human resources people. I think these are people on the interviews. These are people who would be doing the interviewing.
Because what I hear sometimes is when you get like someone with human resources, they don't really know what statistics is.
Right.
So you have a hard time communicating with them.
Right. Yeah. One of the big issues is if you looking for a position, how do you get past human resources? Right. There are probably books written on how to get past human resources. I just saw something recently. They said the last place you want to go to is human resources, which is kind of funny because human resources, right? But you're right. They have a set of rules in place, and they said it's much better to find out who's working at the company and just give them a call. Or maybe I know someone, or you know someone who knows someone, and you can get in touch through them. It's contacts. Okay, we'll skip down here. So what made past hires successful? So this isn't what they saw in an interview. This is after they've been hired. What made them, there's nothing like hiring someone who looks great, and then the first few weeks in the job you realize you made a big mistake, right? So this is the how well are they doing? So it says attitude and personality was at the top factor. Attitude and personality. That's what makes them successful. With communication skills and stat knowledge nearly as popular. So you can kind of picture this if you have a lousy attitude, right? Or if your personality is miserable and you're constantly, looking at the ceiling or facing the board or something when you're supposed to be talking to people, you're not going to get anywhere. Okay? So attitude and personality. Yeah, I know someone, Ron Snee, who was a great statistician at DuPont. He's doing consulting. I think it's a big company now. But it was one of the things he mentioned. Because you have the statistical knowledge and a positive attitude. There was a third thing which I don't remember. Hopefully, I'll remember at some point in my life. But attitude was huge. And when he came in, you could feel his attitude. He had a great attitude. Okay, programming and collaboration were up there. So it suggests the same dimensions that make a candidate stand out in interviews are also tied to successful work performance. That's good. I guess it means the interviewers are doing a good job, picking out what they think is important. Deficits. This is more interesting, right? Let's see what. Not surprisingly, the strengths were also listed as deficits. So the top category was programming, with communication and statistical knowledge also frequently mentioned. So about virtually half of the employers said when they had problems with their hires, it was programming skills. And you can imagine we could easily, not just this program, but any program, we can just teach the theory of experimental design or the theory of regression, give you some simple data sets to work on. Everything is nice and arranged, right? Nice rectangular format. And we say, go ahead and do it. And your biggest concern is, well, should I use ProcReg or ProcGLM? Wow, let me think about it. This is an important decision, right? And you find out really the hardest thing is to get your data in shape so that you can do the analysis. I don't know if I mentioned this in the programming class, but any kind of big data set, I probably spend 80% of my time reshaping the data, cleaning the data, to get it ready. That's what a tremendous amount of time is spent on that. So it says programming needs involve more than proc invocations in SAS. Right? So if you can do the data step, if you're taking the second SAS class now, right? Learning how to write macros is huge. SQL, also known as ProcSQL in SAS, right? Absent of relevant coursework was a concern, but it tended to be linked to employers with specific emphases. Not knowing a particular technique was not viewed as a tremendous limitation for graduates from programs with a solid background who possessed an interest in learning. So it means don't forget everything you learn in theory. And in fact, hopefully you'll go beyond what you learn in theory, because what we teach here in theory is like basic theory. Okay? Get another book out on theory that's a step higher. Then get another one that's a step higher than that. That'll give you a much stronger background, so that when there's a new problem, you can look it up and you go, oh yeah, I could figure this out. I look at my my area of expertise. Maybe I'll just call it my greatest area of interest is experimental design. And I think I took one theoretical course in experimental design. It was just theoretical. It was all math. And then I took another course in experimental design, but I walked out in 2 weeks because it was like too low level. It was like boring me to death. And then I took a course in clinical trials, I think, because I was doing some biostatistics for a while. But that's a whole different, clinical trials. That's a whole different aspect of design than most of what we teach in experimental design. So I knew virtually nothing about experimental design. I basically picked it up all after I started working, and I found out this would be pretty useful. So, yeah. But I had a good background. I was very happy with the background I got. Okay. So we can go on, but you'll see the same things over and over and over again here, right? So programming, statistical knowledge. I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything on this? One more page maybe here. This is just what I repeated earlier, the 6 recommendations. So solid foundation in theory and methods. But as it says here, employees assume you know that, right? I mean, you just spend 1.5 years or 2 years getting a degree in statistics. Programming skills. Graduates would like to see more programming added in their programs. SAS was mentioned more frequently than other environments. General programming skills beyond adding templates. Communication skills is what distinction among the top candidates. Encounter non-routine real problems. Where do you think the best place is in our program to encounter non-routine real problems? Does anybody know? Where do you think you're going to encounter non-routine real problems?
Thesis, capstone.
Yeah. Thesis, capstone? Yeah. Yeah, thesis is non-routine. I don't know how real they are. But yeah, thesis, you dive very deeply into one specific type of non-routine problem and you try to advance the knowledge in the field, right? In capstone, you'll get more non-routine real problems. But because we want to keep our own sanity, we don't want to make them too non-routine because that's just too painful for the faculty. Yeah, and it's just frustrating for students, right? So we try to extend it, but we don't try to extend it too much, it's crazy. Internships are good things to have. Okay? That's basically it. You can tell this is written by a group of statisticians because it says, we may not make inferential claims about the population of recent graduates. Doesn't that sound like something a statistician would have said?
These are not samples from their respective populations.
Well, let's see. These were not probability samples, right, from their respective populations. I don't even know if they tried to get, I'm guessing they tried to take probability samples, random samples, but when you only get a 25% response rate, that doesn't work out too well. Are there questions on this? Well, you all did really well. If I could give you a score, I'd give you all A's. But since you're not getting any credit for this class, I don't think it matters too much. But what I'm going to do is turn this off. Bring this up. So the last thing I'd like to do is let's just see how well you think you might be getting this in our program. Right. So statistical thinking, theory and methods. You feel like you're getting enough of that? I'm not going to ask you if you want any less. Does anybody think that they would like to have more theory and methods?
I think like the total absence of Bayesian theory and methods is kind of glaring.
The total absence of Bayesian theory and methods is glaring. Yeah, so Bayesian. If we were working, I don't know, number of years ago, I mean, there was a course here on Bayes, but I called it Baby Bayes because that's pretty much what it was. So it didn't really have that. And among Bayesian methods, there's I'll call it old Bayes and new Bayes. And of course, all you know would be new Bayes, but new Bayes is very computer oriented. The old Bayes was, we'll set up our priors. If you know what that means, great. If not, I'm not going to explain it. We'll set up our priors so that after you collect the data, it's easy to get the posteriors. So that it actually lent itself to a fairly wide variety of problems, but it was still somewhat limited. Okay, but now with MC, and other techniques, there's virtually nothing you can't solve. That'd be great. So we used to teach Baby Bayes, but we also used to teach mostly engineers. And engineers, when they're designing experiments or working in statistical process control, they have really virtually no need for Bayesian methods. Now, that's probably not true anymore, but in general, that's not the kind of thing that goes too well with what engineers need to know. But it would be great. It would be great.
I think it'd be a good way to boost your ability to think and program effectively too.
Yes.
It's just, you can't do it otherwise.
Yeah. Is there a Bayes session in one of these? In the
There's one tomorrow.
There's one tomorrow with Dr. Voelkel?
Introduction to Bayes and computing
Mm-hmm.
vision problems.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff, but if you want to understand Bayes, you have to understand the theory of Bayesian methods, right? What's the fundamental idea of Bayesian, which is like, that's critical. And after you do that, then the next question is, well, if I want to solve a problem, how can I solve a problem that's not just a trivial problem? A trivial problem you can solve easily. But how do I solve other problems? And that's where it's useful to know how to use computer methods. But if you understand the fundamental Bayesian paradigm, and you understand that and you have a good feel for it, Dr. Voelkel can show it to you, but you can also go on to R, or you can go on, there's lots of places where you can actually learn how to program it. But that would be good. That would be very good. Okay. How about programming? Comments on programming?
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, overall it's pretty good, but one thing I don't know about is like how everything comes together in workflows. Like for example, usually in other work domains, you have like all these concepts about modularity and like how to bring everything together. Like I feel like a lot of time we just teach the tools here, just how to do like point things, but not like a complete workflow.
A complete workflow for statistical analysis?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, because there's different kind of workflows. Like if you work at Capital One, a credit card company, to them the workflow is maybe every day they get millions of transactions come in, and they want to have a workflow so that everything that's being done can be automated. So they may have statisticians and computer scientists working to develop methods for what it is they want to study, because they have like managers, of course, doing this as well, for what it is they want to study. But once they decided that, then they want to do a workflow. And that kind of workflow is typically out of the range of what statisticians are taught, because we're taught how to use SAS and R. But if you want to have this automated every day for the next few years, then you want to have code written that will grab things off the web or grab things off this and automate it, print out the reports, and do that in an automated way. And SAS and R they're not designed to do that. I mean, you can force them to do things like that, but that's not particularly useful tools. So one of the things that we don't teach here that might be useful would be Python.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. That's another. And we thought about doing that, but we have 10 courses, and there's only so much time to do things. But at least one of our students said they're using a lot of Python where they work. So
like you usually just use SAS and R for do exploratory analysis, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Just like give insight, and after you got that, use another language to implement your findings.
Yeah, I mean, if you graduate with an MS in statistics and you know SAS and R, that's usually considered. And then if you really know it, right, you know how to do it. You just don't know how to run proc reg or something, which hopefully all of you have a good background in, and you'll remember that background and you'll continue to practice, techniques. So if you have that, that's usually considered pretty good. But you can see the complaints here were not that they didn't know Python. It was that they didn't know how to use the programs that they were supposedly using. They didn't know how to use them in any kind of depth.
I don't know how common it is for people to use something beyond Word to do equation editing and report work, but I think LaTeX is really powerful and could be.
Okay, so the note is isn't quite connected to this, but can you expand your skills beyond Word and learn how to use LaTeX, which is a typesetting language. Actually, what happens at a lot of companies is that things go in the opposite direction. They say, you're about to use SAS and R, and they go, could you write this up in Excel for me? Because I want to be able to use this out in the field. Could you do that for me? So some of that happens. I think it's pretty rare in most work in academic environments. Academic environments, LaTeX is used extensively, but I think in most work environments that is typically not the case. It might be nice to be able to write code to put things out on HTML, and there are, SAS can do that and R can do that, so there are things that are useful for doing that, but yeah. Okay, any other comments on programming? Yeah. So I feel a little guilty, like in the DOE class, that we're not doing more programming in the class, but Yeah, you'll see next week. There's a lot of stuff I'll hand to you that's related to code, but it's still everything that I'm going to give you basically is going to be in these nice rectangular data sets, right? So there's very little or no manipulation. They just kind of hand it to you. Let's see. Project experience analyzing data. Okay, communication. Have you learned any communication skills? Not a 1, huh? Not a 1. All right.
I mean, I guess like I don't know what that. I haven't ever done this for a company or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't quite know like what that entails for them. But I look at that almost more as like, can you do an analysis and then actually give something that's interpretable?
Yeah, communication is part of it. Doing analysis, giving something that's interpretable. It might be doing that, and then for the managers, making up a PowerPoint presentation so you can take your 50-page analysis and summarize it in 2 or 3 slides for a way a manager can understand. That could be communication. Yeah. So yeah, there's a joke that says when you're a baby, your main communication skill is written. It's written. It's oral, right? It's oral, and then as you go through school, it becomes more and more written, and then you get a job, and now it becomes a lot more oral again. Because if you don't have good oral communication skills, you're in trouble. Communication, good at interviews. That's an important thing to do. I mean, I know some people. I think they're very sharp, but they were. Yeah, I think I can do that. Yeah, I could do that. And I think they lost some interviews because they just did not interview well. So if you feel you might fall in that category, it's not a bad idea to learn how to interview better. So sorry to pick on you, Sandy. But for co-ops, was there any place you could get interviewing skills here at RIT?
They have some workshops for it.
Okay, so there are interviewing workshops.
I went to a seminar or two. They will do individualized practice sessions and give you feedback.
Individualized practice sessions. All right, good. The first 2 workshops I went to when I got a job at a company, I was all excited to go to these statistics conferences. The first 2 conferences they sent me was how to write better and how to give talks better. But that's basically what they were. So how to write better was if you can't compress things into 2 pages, it's not going to be useful in business. Because you might write a big report, but you need an executive summary that's about a half page. Or if you're writing a memo, you don't want the memo to be more than 2 pages. More than 2 pages, people they'll just throw it out. So they focus tremendously on that. And then for speaking skills, they talked about giving analogies when you're giving talks, or giving examples, giving statistics. It was actually they used the mnemonic ASOP. In case you don't know it, ASOP, he was a person who wrote these tales. They all had these wonderful endings to them. It'd be like the dog in the barn who wouldn't let the cows have any hay, even though the dog didn't want any hay. Things like that. So Aesop's tales. But analogy, example, statistics, opinion, and personal stories. I'm thinking, I'm going here for this? I just got a PhD and this is what I'm going for? But then they also asked us to get up and talk for about, 5 minutes or so. And then they gave us a video, a VHS tape. It was a VHS tape, and then we went into a private room and we got to watch it. And I learned more in those 5 minutes, probably in 1 minute, than I had learned, in the last 20 years of my life on what I was like when I was talking. I think I was standing up like this. This is how I was talking. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. So it's good to interview, and it's good to get to be videoed. And we can all do that, right? We can all videotape ourselves or have somebody tape us or record us, right? We can all do that. Those are very powerful things. Collaboration. Do we encourage that in this program? Collaboration?
It's allowed.
If it's allowed. If it's allowed, yes. How often is it allowed?
On most of the homework, but none of the quizzes or exams or
Yeah.
probably.
It's more courses allow some degree of collaboration,
Yeah.
But it's not like they enforce it. It's like neutral.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can work with it.
Yeah. But the fact is, I mean, it's really hard to do collaboration because what are you collaborating with? You're collaborating with a bunch of people just like you. I mean, you're master's students in statistics, and you're working on something very narrow, right? You're working on a statistics problem. I mean, real collaboration is much harder to get. And to me, it's pretty hard to figure out how to do this unless you're actually at a company and you realize how important it is. So collaboration means you're working with, if you're in an engineering company, you're working with a project engineer, you're working with a design engineer, you're working with people in manufacturing, you're working with all these people, and you have to work with them in a fruitful way. That's collaboration. You know, I think it's a pretty hard thing to teach at a university. All right, last question. Well, I don't promise, but have you learned any collaboration? Have you taken any classes in it, or has it been actively enforced?
I mean, we've had some like projects.
Projects? Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah. It's pretty hard to do some of these things at a university. Pretty hard to do. Multitasking, meeting deadlines. You're probably pretty good at that, right?
Estimating the time frame, maybe not so much.
Estimating the time frame. That's a good thing to point out because I mean I used to do a lot more consulting. I don't do that much anymore, but it's really hard to estimate how long a project will last. It's really long. And what do you think I usually do? Underestimate or overestimate it?
Over.
Right.
It's
I usually say, well, yeah, I can get that done in 2 weeks. Or actually, they don't care how many. The time isn't that important. They want to know how many days it will take me because that's what I get. They get charged by how many days I work for them. So I say, yeah, I think this will take me between 1 and 2 days. And I'll say, oh, between 8 and 12 days. And after 12 days, I'm like 75% done. I go, darn it. You know, but I mean, to me, I just do the rest of it for free. I don't. Unless it's their fault. If they say we're going to give you nice clean data and they give me something that takes me a week to clean up, I go, that's your problem, right? So, but it's very difficult to do. Any other thoughts on this? What employers? Well, you did a good job. So I'd encourage you to think about this basically every day from now on until you graduate. Think about what you can do to improve these skills.
Do you have any strong recommendations as far as any of this?
Well, for statistical methods, not so much statistical thinking, but for statistical methods and theory, let's do the theory first. Again, I would encourage you to get a book that's one level higher than what Professor Lawrence uses, or maybe then another level higher, and see, because this is a pretty applied MS program. There are other MS programs in the country in which most or a lot of the students, what's the difference between most and a lot? That many of the students in the master's program are there because they want to go on to their PhD, and so if the master's students are not separated from the PhD students, the master's students will be getting the same level of theory that the PhD students have, which is pretty brutal on a lot of master's students. Or the master's degree may be, it's called a consolation prize. And I know it makes you feel great, right? But in our program, if you're having a hard time, well, we'll give you an advanced certificate, right? So you take a number of classes, we'll give you an advanced certificate. But if you're a PhD student, if you only go halfway through, what do you get? You get a master's degree, right? But those people, they've had really strong theory courses. Now, where they're weak is almost certainly in programming, right? Or in actually analyzing real data. I mean, when I was at Wisconsin, it was not considered a highly theoretical program, but I mean, there were classes where there was no data whatsoever. I took a class in advanced experimental design. I mean, it was all theory. How do you create optimal designs? What are some different ways you can calculate these designs, and so on and so on. And so what you have is what those students lack. But after 5 years, they might if they get the job, they might pick that up. But they still have all their theory stuff, right? it's really hard for you to pick up extra theory stuff after you graduate because you're going to be too busy doing other things. That's a tougher thing to do. So I'd encourage you to do that. If you're asked questions and you can't answer them in a class, scratch your head and say, what was I missing where I couldn't get that? Remember in the 701 class, I was asking about, what's the variance, if I only gave you the 4 Y bars, how would you estimate the variance of the individuals? So if you look at that, go back and think about what made that such a hard problem and how could it become an easier problem in the future for you to solve. Think about what was the kind of things that were missing. I mean, that's really how you pick up things. I think we all learn better from our mistakes, right? That's how it works. Sorry. So those are the things I would think for programming. I think programming is tough because you got hit with it really hard last term, and now you're probably going, wow, how do I sign on to SAS? Or how do I, you're probably using it a lot less than you were last term. So I'd encourage you to try to, grab some large data sets or just something that looks messy and just play around with trying to clean it up, right? Clean it up, reshape it. Or if you have an interest in something, if you're interested in baseball, try to grab some baseball data and play around with it. Try to do something to do it. Now the problem is you're all taking 3 classes. Some of you are taking 4 classes. You probably don't have a lot of free time. But try to keep this in mind. How many people are taking the second SAS course? So a good number of people. Okay, they're taking the second SAS course. That's good. I would encourage everybody, if you took the first class, to try to pass the first SAS exam. Now you may want to do it over the summer when you have more time. I don't know how much free time you have here to study, but I would encourage you to do that. Pass the first SAS exam, and then if you're taking Dr. Alana's class, try to pass the second one. Because that provides, it not only will sharpen your skills, but it provides you a credential to say, here. I mean, that's a national, or it's an international credential. Taking the SAS R class, I mean, I think it's like amazing, but it's just some class somebody took as, at RIT, that's all it is, right? But if you pass the SAS exam, that's an international credential. So I would encourage you to do that. I think those are pretty much basic things that I think would help here. And of course, when you have questions, feel free to come in and ask any of the professors. Feel free to come in and ask us. And if there's a group of you that wants to work for a while on some data, I'd be happy to meet with you, or just I can just send it to you, and you can do it together over a period of time. I'd be happy to do that. When I was the program chair, we didn't have as many undergraduate classes, so we didn't have as many students assigned to things, and so I said, well, you're just sitting in the lab. I'm going to make you do this work. And of course, everybody hated it that I made them do it but they appreciated it afterwards because it was useful. So if anybody is in doing that, let me know. But I would say if you want to do it, try not to drop out. Just keep working at it. It would take, I don't know, maybe 2 to 4 hours a week. And I don't expect you to answer all. It's not like you're going to get graded on it, but I expect you to put some effort into it. So if you're interested, you can talk among yourselves, and if you want to do that, let me know. Any other questions or comments? All right. All right. Well, thanks for putting up with me. And if you have any other questions or so, just let me know.